Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm Jon Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. I'm a past member of the International Progressive MS Alliance Scientific Steering Committee, and currently I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society. And I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect and to connect you with MS experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people affected by MS every day. Please feel free to post your comments and questions in the GoToWebinar chat box. MS navigators are online throughout today's program, answering questions and connecting you with resources. While the holiday season can be filled with fun and wonderful experiences for a lot of people, well, it can also mean a lot of stress. Family, cooking, eating, shopping, attending social events, either virtually or in person, and entertaining guests can quickly become too much to handle, especially if you're living with an unpredictable disease like multiple sclerosis. Today, we're talking with Megan Weigel, an advanced registered nurse practitioner specializing in neurological care. And Megan is here to help us learn how to identify and manage stress during this busy and sometimes chaotic time of year. Welcome, Megan, and thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Jon. Thank you. It's good to be here. It's hard to believe that the holidays are here.
You know, everyone experiences stress, but for people living with MS, stress can make everyday life feel overwhelming. Megan, let's start with a definition. What is stress and how common is it for people living with MS?
Well, stress is actually normal. Some people might go, what? Stress is normal? But our bodies were made for stress. And a good example is, let's say you're making a pot of tea, right? And the whistle starts to blow and you stop paying attention to the tea and you hear the whistle and you're like, oh, I've got to go get the tea. That's sort of an acute stressor that doesn't cause harm, but certainly if the whistle kept blowing, it would get annoying, right? Maybe cause a little bit of tension. So the stress that we're talking about today is the stress that happens when that acute stress becomes chronic. And all those same hormones and neurochemicals that flood your body when you have to do something to protect yourself in the moment just kind of hang out. And they end up causing physical and emotional tension. They can cause illness. And it's very common in multiple sclerosis. One of the reasons why is because MS is unpredictable, and that leaves you in this kind of chronic state of alert if you don't learn how to deal with that.
Well, you mentioned that flood of hormones and neurochemicals. How does stress affect our mind and body, and how does it impact MS symptoms?
So in general, stress is chronic stress, like that which is abnormal is inflammatory. So it can cause changes in the body, in the immune system. It can cause changes in the cardiovascular system. It can cause changes in the endocrine system that ultimately lead to disease. From a symptom standpoint, it can make us feel inattentive, forgetful, tired, anxious, irritable, constipated. And so you might have heard some of your MS symptoms in the box of symptoms of stress, and it certainly can make MS symptoms feel a little bit worse.
Well, before we can manage something, we have to be able to identify it. So how can someone recognize that they are stressed? What are some of the common signs to look for?
I like to tell people, whether we're talking about stress or not, to take a general survey of their body every day. So when you wake up in the morning, you just kind of go from head to toe. Is this a good day, a medium day, or a bad day? And part of that general survey includes emotional and physical tension in your body. So you might notice sometimes even when you wake up that your shoulders are really tight, or maybe your jaws tight because you are grinding your teeth at night, or your brow is furrowed. For some people, stress shows up as belly pain or indigestion. For others, it shows up as getting overwhelmed really easily, or having a much harder time concentrating, or maybe it's the holidays, you're trying to do a million things at once and none of them are getting done and you can't remember where you started. So those are some physical symptoms. For others, it's a rapid heart rate or feeling short of breath. I don't want to discount emergency symptoms, but just that feeling of physical or emotional overwhelm is kind of a blanket description of what stress feels like.
And are there ways for people to identify what causes or increases their stress?
I think that the best way to do that is really to watch yourself over time. So for people who've never really had a problem with stress before, it's going to be easy to see what situations cause stress. But for people who've been dealing with stress most of their lives, they might just say, well, I always feel this way. So I encourage people to keep a journal, and notice when emotions are heightened or when physical symptoms are heightened. I also encourage people to pay attention to that gut feeling. So if you're already, say, a little bit overwhelmed from the holidays and someone invites you to another party or asks you to contribute an appetizer to something else, and you have that like, oh God feeling, just say no.
Well, last year, when you joined us to talk about this same topic, a lot of our viewers told us they were feeling stressed and worried about contracting COVID-19. So they avoided making plans to get together with family and friends. And although the pandemic continues,
Mhm.
this year we also have access to COVID-19 vaccines. Has the availability of the COVID-19 vaccines made people feel more comfortable about getting together?
My general feeling is yes. Unfortunately, we have this, resurgence of, or I should say, influx of Delta, the Delta variant in states who haven't had it yet. I live in Florida, so it went through us as one of the first states. We have Omicron, so people are worried about these things. But I think in general, there's an overall greater feeling of safety from vaccines and from boosters. At least that's what I'm hearing in my community.
So, how should we be preparing for in-person holiday get-togethers so that we can celebrate and still stay safe?
I think it's important to talk to people about vaccination status first and foremost. I also think it's important to consider what you're comfortable with. For example, there may be an older family member who has medical conditions that really do increase the risk of more severe COVID vaccine, or maybe you're on, COVID virus, or maybe you're on an immunosuppressant medication, and you have family traveling. You may not be comfortable with being inside without masks on with family traveling. And now some people will say, well, one day they say one thing about masks and the next day they say the other thing about masks. But guess what? Not being comfortable is stressful. So if within your family you can all agree to make the person with the greatest need the most comfortable, some stress.
Talking to loved ones about their COVID-19 vaccination status can be awkward, especially if they hold a different point of view. Do you
Mhm.
have any tips for how we should be approaching these conversations?
Yeah, I think one of the best things to go into these conversations with is the idea that you can agree to disagree, and that you as a person can decide whether or not to attend a situation. And if you decide to attend a situation where people have different viewpoints than you can make it as safe for yourself as possible. So if for some reason most of your family is not vaccinated and you are, and you're worried about being around them, you could ask them to gather outside, and or you could gather inside with them and wear a mask and even wear eye protection if you're very, very worried about it. But I think that just being a little bit more cautious can reduce the fear around people who may not have the same vaccine viewpoint as you. And review the CDC guidelines. You know, they do change. They do change based on the incidence of variants in certain states. And so take a look at those before you gather with your families. Hanukkah's over for those of you who celebrate Hanukkah, but you may still be engaging in Christmas activities, and things can change in 2 weeks.
We heard from Jessica, who told us that she's been living with MS for 10 years, and she's come to despise the holiday season. She says that she's always stressed out trying to decorate, cook special meals and desserts, and find the perfect gifts for family and friends. Now, her kids think Jessica is just a Grinch, and Jessica's wondering how she can tame some of her stress so that she can actually enjoy the time with her kids instead of dreading it.
You know, I might tell Jessica to gather her family together and decide as a family what their 3 to 5 most favorite things are about the holidays, and focus on doing those well and doing those things together instead of trying to do the 500 family traditions that you have for 5 generations that nobody eats the cookies anymore. Right? Maybe you want to make a new cookie. So, so I would encourage you to pick the top 3 to 5 things that your family loves. And as far as gift giving goes, focus on giving things from the heart instead of giving the best monetary gift. Give a memory instead of a present. And that usually serves people well.
We also heard from Robert, who unfortunately lost his partner earlier this year, and he's feeling particularly sad and lonely this holiday season. Now, he says he knows he should be reaching out to friends for support, but he says he just doesn't feel like it. Do you have any advice for Robert about how to best cope during this tough time?
2 things I tell Robert, importantly. The first one is to definitely be sure he's getting regular mental health treatment. And depending on how he lost his partner, one of the resources that I often give to people is hospice. Hospice often offers grief counseling, and so do places of worship. Churches, synagogues, mosques often have grief counselors, or the religious leader will be a grief counselor. So I'd encourage him to seek that formal help. But one of the things around grief and attending activities is you almost have to relive it, right? So people, they want to talk about what happened and they want to see how you're doing, and that kind of makes it even harder to think about attending someone. So I would encourage Robert to reach out to one friend, pick one activity, and ask that friend to accompany him, to go there with him, and to leave with him. And just set a time limit. Say, I'm going to try this out for 15 minutes. And if I like it, I'm going to stay longer. But if I'm uncomfortable, I have an out. And that out comes with a buddy. So you don't have to feel like you're just evacuating the situation alone. But that would be my best advice for him.
Depression is one of the most common symptoms of MS, and it runs particularly high during this time of year. Now, some of the symptoms of stress are remarkably similar to symptoms of depression, and some of those symptoms mimic or overlap symptoms of MS. So, Can you tell us what the difference is between stress and depression, and how would someone know which one they're dealing with?
Yeah, so chronic stress can lead to depression, but by definition, depression has to last for 2 weeks or more. And the better part of your day has to be filled with symptoms of depression. And typically those symptoms are difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much, eating too little or eating too much, loss of interest in activities that you've usually really enjoyed doing, feeling guilty, hopeless, worthless, a decrease in your energy level from what it might already be as a part of your MS fatigue, difficulty with concentration and attention, again, different than your regular MS issues, and also being clumsy or klutzy, again, different than MS. Of course, if a person is having morbid thoughts, so thoughts about death or dying or suicidal thoughts or plan, that is not stress related. I mean, that acute stress related. That's always always in need of an emergency call. So when you think about MS and your how you deal with fatigue, cognitive issues, and balance on a regular day, if those things change for you and they're associated with mood, melancholy mood issues, then I would wonder if maybe depression were a problem.
And when is it time for someone to get professional help, and who should they reach out to?
Well, I like to recommend professional help for everyone, but but there are not enough providers in the world for that. I think every human could use a few counseling visits. But you know, any time that you are under a lot of stress and you have coping skills that you're not using, or you're choosing to use coping skills that aren't healthy. And so by that, I mean, usually exercise helps when you feel stressed, but you can't even get yourself to exercise, or the exercise isn't helping. Or usually you maybe meet a friend for a beer now and then, and that helps you feel relaxed, but suddenly you're meeting that friend 3 days a week and you're having 6 beers. Not good. So things like that can be signs that you need to reach out for help. And if you have a counselor that you've seen before, reach out to them. If not, you can reach out to your primary care doctor or your MS provider and ask for a referral to a mental health professional.
Let's talk about some of the techniques and strategies that can help people manage stress throughout the holidays and beyond the holidays, for that matter. Now, Claudia said she's trying to adopt a meditation practice to help her feel calm. We heard from Kyle, who said that he manages his stress through diet and exercise. And Alana tells us that she likes to plan ahead to give herself enough time to get things done. Do these strategies work?
I love the polar opposite strategies that you mentioned, because actually some people find relaxation and movement, like Kyle, and some people find relaxation in stillness, like Claudia. So I think it's important to find, find where your flow is with feeling relaxed. During the holidays, we're bombarded with what I consider to be excess. So one of the best things that you can do during the holidays is take a look at what you might be exposed to and make a plan for it. So if you know you're going to be doing things that leave you tired, plan to not stay out so late so that you don't have to overuse caffeine. If you know that you're going to be doing things where there's alcohol, set a limit on what you're going to drink, or maybe you choose not to drink at all. Again, these are just basic things that you can do to help you manage the back end of stressful days, even when they're fun. Don't go to parties hungry. Make sure that your body's full of healthy food before you go out. And just kind of planning for relaxation of some sort during the day, whether it is moving your body or whether it is, I just need this is my chill out time. I need some chill out time before we move on today.
Well, you've shared some very timely tips and strategies for managing stress. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our audience to remember?
Well, one of my top 3 takeaways is definitely that gut check when you're asked to do so many things. So checking in with your gut before you say yes to something and giving yourself permission to say no. So that's probably my first top 3 strategy. My second would be to make a list of the top 5 things, like I mentioned earlier, that you enjoy doing for the holidays, and stick to those and think of the rest as icing in the cake. If you get time to do that, that's great. The third would be to maintain your routine of healthy living during the holidays. So maintain your routine of sleeping enough, of how you manage stress, of eating healthfully, of moving your body, and of staying socially engaged with people you love and care about. Don't let that fall to the wayside because you feel like you have to get busy with something else.
Well, thank you again for sharing your expertise with us today, Megan. I
You're
think we have
welcome.
time to answer a few more of our viewers' questions. Patty says she's seen conflicting studies about stress causing MS flares. She wants to know whether stress can cause an MS flare or does it just cause temporary symptoms?
It depends on the severity and the chronicity of the stress. So usually a temporary increase in stress could cause just a temporary increase in symptoms until the stressor is removed. But if a person is exposed to prolonged severe prolonged severe stress, like say a long illness of a loved one or a divorce or significant financial hardship, then there has been an association with those things in gadolinium enhancing lesions and relapses.
Tanya tells us that she's going to her sister's house for Christmas and she already knows that everyone attending is vaccinated. What she wants to know is whether there are still precautions she should be considering while celebrating with her family.
Yeah, so I would encourage Tanya to take a look at the CDC guidelines literally within 48 hours of going, because who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, but hopefully everything will be a-okay. And to follow the recommendations for traveling, which in general, we're still masking with public transportation. Follow the recommendations in public places. But if you're gathering with family and they've all been vaccinated and you've been vaccinated, the highest level of precaution if people are traveling from different areas would be to have everyone do a viral test 1 to 3 days before they travel. And then again, upon their return. So if you're really concerned about that level of disease prevention. And when you're inside together, you could wear masks if you're very, very concerned about, again, preventing the spread of a variant. But I think that for the most part, if we're vaccinated and boosted, we really should take heart that the joy we're getting from being together, we really need it right now. Let's just put it that way.
David tells us that he's concerned about his wife's mental health, but she refuses to admit that anything is wrong. He wants to know what he can do to support his wife and himself.
Well, David's in a tough situation because I'm sure he just wants to fix everything for his wife, as most support partners would. One of the first things I tell David to do is to make sure that he had good resources and that he had a good outlet for his emotions and also for developing coping skills that helped him to deal with his role as a support partner. He might approach his wife about her stress level rather than about mental health or depression, because for many people, there's still a stigma around mental health issues. And so saying something like, let's call her Mary, like, hey, Mary, you know, what can we do to reduce your stress level? Is there anything that we need to talk about with your MS, or do you think maybe you need to make an appointment with your primary care doctor? Any of these things might allow her to open up and accept an opportunity for help. If it's very severe, then David can call Mary's healthcare provider and he can say, you know, I'm very concerned about my wife. She is not going to initiate any appointment on her own? Is there anything that we can do? Now, I, as Megan, have been on the receiving end of these calls, and I have made up a reason to call a person into the office. So I get a call from a support partner, and I'll say, well, you know, we probably should see her and get some labs, wink, wink, without divulging that someone who loves her was really, really concerned.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions, and thank you, Megan, for being with us today.
Thank you, John. Pleasure's mine. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. And before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please be sure to visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends, ways for you to get involved, and upcoming events that are taking place near you. And remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find Real Talk MS at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank Megan Weigel for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webinar will be available at the Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/MSexpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's webinar is important. So you'll see a survey pop up in a moment when we close out the webinar. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see a link to that survey pinned to the comments section. And on YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us continuously improve, and it helps shape future programs. The survey takes just 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Megan Weigel and the National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices.